In this video, I'm going to narrate a Michael Hall article so that you can listen while doing some other activity. Now, Michael Hall is a co-founder of Neurosemantics, which was created to raise the quality of ethics and professionalism in NLP and to take NLP to a higher level of quality in presentation. This article is titled, "Listening is Dangerous." It starts with a quote by Carl Rogers. "The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate because listening is too dangerous. The first requirement is courage, and we do not always have it." End quote. So in the above quote, Carl Rogers makes a pretty incredible assertion. He says that listening is too dangerous. In his context, listening is too dangerous to ourselves. That is, we are not courageous enough to really listen. So what is the danger? The danger is that you will be changed. You might change your mind, your understanding, your belief, your value, etc. As a coach, even when you have no agenda except to be as helpful as a client allows you to be, you may be changed. Your ideas about the client may change. Your understandings of what you can do or need to do may change. And even deeper, the client's presentation and struggle may affect you deeply. It may relate to things in your own life. Listening is dangerous because to truly listen, you have to take into yourself the ideas, understandings, premises, etc. of your client. And the mere fact of taking on the client's model of the world will affect you. You would be different. It is inevitable. So part of the process of listening is acknowledgement, and that's where it's just like, step one is just to acknowledge the other person, and you listen. And for a lot of people, this is such a challenge, but the first step is to acknowledge the person. Okay, you got something to say, let me hear you. Okay, so to continue with Michael's article. So Carl Rogers also described the power of making a summary of a person's understanding. In moderating a conflict or helping two people to come to an understanding of each other, this is what he recommended. This is also one of the key processes we use in group and team coaching as a way to facilitate persons within a group to come to truly understand each other. And then there's a quote, "Each person can speak up for himself only after he has first restated the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker accurately and to that speaker's satisfaction." Now this takes me back to a comment that Richard Bandler said sometime maybe about 1987. And he said, look, the problem with a lot of people is that they paraphrase. So they say, oh, so what you mean is this, or what you said is that. And the person says, no, I didn't say that. I didn't mean that. And so what Richard Bandler suggested was to paraphrase. So to start off with, someone says something, you repeat the exact words they said. So for example, I had a client yesterday, she said something to the effect that in work, in work, da, da, da. And so I didn't sort of like say, well, at work or doing work or when you're working. I repeated those words, that preposition in. It was in work. So we start out with paraphrasing. You repeat exactly what the other person says. Then they will get the feeling that you understand it. Now you probably don't, but what you're doing by using their words, by using their sentence structure, you then begin to associate into their language patterns. And then from that, I think that is how the understanding arises of what the person means. By first off, you paraphrase, and then from that, you build a new understanding, and then you can do a summary, which I think the other person may then accept and say, yeah, you're on track. So be careful of the paraphrasing and summarizing. So back to the article. Each person can speak up for himself only after he has first restated the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker accurately and to that speaker's satisfaction. This speaks to listening in that it takes a lot of active listening and effort to summarize what another person has said and to keep check if you now understand them to their satisfaction. In context of disagreement and conflict, this process has to be repeated several times to just get one person to adequately indicate that they have heard another person. And here the courage to listen and then to articulate the other person's point of view becomes even more challenging. That's because to accurately repeat the other's point of view to his or her satisfaction requires taking on that perspective. And in conflict situations, that is the last thing most people want to do. Now, my previous point about actually paraphrasing, and this is what Michael does, because he takes the quote from Carl Rogers and he actually repeats the words. He repeats the words precisely. Have you noticed that? So what makes listening dangerous to yourself, to a change that you might need to make, is that by listening you have to enter into another person's private world, into that person's way of thinking, model of the world, and see the world the way that person sees things. In metacoaching, we describe this as entering into the client's matrix of meaning to understand the client on the client's terms, not ours. So this process will feel dangerous to any person who does not have a solid sense of their own self and a strong sense of ego strength to know oneself. I'm just reflecting upon all the stuff that keeps going on in the political world. Anyway, so given that now you know why we emphasize ego strength in APG, that's Accessing Personal Genius, and in Coaching Mastery, that's why we make ego strength one of the requirements for even being at metacoaching. Without ego strength, it is essentially impossible to listen to another person without personalizing, being induced into an unresourceful state, etc. And so part of this is being able to make a distinction between process and content. And I remember years ago, 30 odd years ago, something or other, doing a group, and it was just like we were shown how quickly people hook in. You say a word and you will find people will hook in almost immediately. And so it's really useful to understand the distinctions, the process of the difference between process and content. So process is it's the structure, it's the map. Process, it's like where you heat some water to boiling. But that's the process. The water is the content. You can heat any liquid or metal or solid, anything. You can heat it. That's a process. Okay, so back to this. Okay, ego strength not only means that you can face unsettling and disturbing facets of reality without caving in, it means that you're strong enough in yourself to be available for someone else. That's also why we do the releasing judgment pattern in metacoaching and the decontamination chamber. Those patterns are designed to enable a metacoach to be able to try on someone else's model of the world without losing his or own sense of self and model of the world. The courage that's needed to fully, accurately, actively, and compassionately listen is the courage to get yourself out of the way as you listen. All right, so you're not getting caught up in content, you're just staying with the process. Get yourself out of the way as you listen. And that's also a really Eastern concept too. Like when you're crossing the river, you empty your own boat. Empty yourself and you're not going to get into any conflict. Okay, the courage that's needed to fully, accurately, actively, and compassionately listen is the courage to get yourself out of the way as you listen. It is to release any and every agenda that you might have. Get that? It's the courage to go with what you're hearing, to understand it more deeply rather than judge it or fix it. So repeat that. It's the courage to go with what you're hearing, to understand it more deeply rather than judge it or fix it. Yeah, you look back on history, look back on the 20th century, look back on history for the last 2,000 years. You know, you need the ability just to be able to gather information and to withhold judgment. It's a real, what do you call it? It's an amazing ability to be able to withhold judgment. So it's the courage to go with what you're hearing, to understand it more deeply rather than judge it or fix it. So you just get to be. It is the realization that whatever is being said is not about you, and you do not have to personalize it. Other person's just expressing something. So how courageous are you? Given all of this about real listening, how easily can you set yourself aside and just listening in order to understand your client on his or her terms? That's the question that begins to evaluate your effectiveness as a coach. So that's the end of the article. Pretty good article, hey? So let me know what you think in the comments section below, because you could take the article and you could have a discussion about it for a couple of hours. So I'm happy to reply to your comments. And please remember to like, subscribe, and share the video. This really helps my channel. All the best to you, and I look forward to seeing you again.